myself. So, looking forward to this again. Last time we met, the topic of choice, which again we do this by voting. So the voting has in the bottom left corner. We've got Pixelogic Kyle, we got Pixelogic Ashley, we've got Kingsley in this one. I believe my man Mr. Drust is also in this one. So you're going to share the link where you guys can go vote for what the subject will be. So I'm excited to go through these items with you. So we're going to be looking at posing. That's what won the vote last week. Oh, and my man Michael's in here as well. Well, we got like the whole crew in here. Is this just come see Paul fall flat on his face kind of a thing? I think what's going on. So I'm excited to go through this process with you. We're going to be, again, focusing on rigging. We're going to be looking at mainly the transpose line, kind of how I like to do it. I'll be honest with you, the transpose line for me, I taught ZBrush to myself now. How long have I been using this now? 10, 12 years? Somewhere around there. I want to say maybe 11 years. We'll go in between. Transpose line was one of the things that I had difficulty wrapping my head around. But when I sat down and really looked at what it was built for and how it was built, then I had my aha moments. So I want to share that kind of aha moment for me that happened, whatever it was, 11 years ago. From like, oh, I totally get why this is working like this. It totally makes sense. So we're going to be going through that. We're going to be going through ZSphere rigging as well, because you can rig with ZSpheres. What's up? Lock 3 down. I like that name. That's a good name, Lock 3 down. And then we're going to be going into Transpose Master. I want to cover all the options that we have here with Transpose Master. So we're going to be going through all this stuff, including these 3 buttons and these 2 buttons down here. For those that you have used this before, you probably maybe have only used these big top 2 buttons. Okay, so there we go. Lock 3 down. They shared a straw poll there. They just put it in there again for you. So you just click on that link, and that's how you vote for one of the topics, which you're going to see in the bottom left corner of the stream, who's winning and who's not winning in that voting. So again, all the topics are based upon feedback coming in. We've added 2 items this week that were requests from the last meeting. So I'm still keeping around that ZBrush to Photoshop rendering and that nano mesh just because it was getting a lot of votes. So I'm keeping it in the mix, and we're just throwing the other things on top. And again, if you want to make some kind of request for Did You Know That as well, you guys could send it into streaming@pixelogic.com, and then we can look at adding that to the list. So let's get started here. So I'm just going to load a tool that comes shipped with ZBrush. So if you ever want to go back and watch this again, you can reuse this and learn from this over and over and over again. So Caroline Denise gave us this wonderful tool here, Julie, that ships with ZBrush. I'm going to load that up from our Lightbox. I'm going to shift my materials to the basic material. Just it makes it better for me to see her. Okay. Now this particular tool, the character herself, she has layers on them. So I actually want to get rid of the layers because I don't want any of these right now. So I'm going to turn them off so that they're off. And then I'm going to hit this X delete here so we can delete and get rid of those layers because I just want to start fresh with nothing on her just as we see her. So the first thing I want to touch base when posing, if we're looking at just her, right, we can see that the geometry is nice, evenly distributed. We've got pretty good geometry, some nice enough spans going through the arms, going through the legs, and through the waist. So the things to think about when you're going to pose something, unfortunately, because we're just using nothing like a muscling system and crazy skeletons and clusters that an animator would use. It's more about just posing, put some life to your sculpts and your characters, make them breathe. Okay, so you got to think about the underlying geometry when you go. And these are some of the major issues I see, especially when I'm teaching new people learning ZBrush, is if we looked at the demo soldier, right? And if we look at him and go to the lowest level, you can see, hey, it's pretty low, but it might be too low. Specifically, if you look right here in the chest area, it's pretty low, right? So I would probably want to add more geometry there. Okay, so considering I know down the line here when we get into it, you're going to send this to a plugin with Transpose Master, and what that plugin does is it drops everything to the lowest subdivision levels. So I want to take a look at what is my lowest subdivision level, because that's actually what I'm going to be posing, right? So looking at this guy, it's too low. I don't like what's happening in this. I know that's not going to get me a good movement when I go to move that character. So moving up one level, right? That looks a lot better, right? So I'm going to go to the geometry now, and I'm going to say, hey, you know what? This is level 2. I want to turn this into level 1. All right, so I'm going to hit the delete lower, and now that is my level 1. So I need to spend the time probably and go through my subtools and make sure all of them kind of like have that. So if you look now, the shirt's geometry here, right, is relatively low. Does it really match the underlining geometry to the body? Not really. The polygons are a lot bigger in the shirt than they say are in the body, right? So obviously when I go to move that character and that waist or things like that, because this lower subdivision levels, not exactly like the body as far as the density, you might start seeing little changes, little adjustments. Let's say, for example, the shirt maybe starts going into the body, or the body starts popping out through the shirt. You're probably not going to stop that completely, but we kind of want to reduce this as much, and we want to have the same kind of movement. You know, this is great. I could probably do almost robotic. Demo robotic, man. Okay, so I want to have the similar geometry. So looking at this shirt, it might be better also to go up on this and then delete the lower. And now both those geometry, if you're looking back and forth, are relatively the same density. I'm not looking to be exact here. I just want to stay in that same world if I can. What's up, Ashley's in the house again. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, so looking at all this, you want to spend the time. Now, we might go, well, this is only 11 subtools, and some of our meshes were 100 subtools. Absolutely. So what I want to land with you here is think about this stuff in the very beginning as you start sculpting, and think about what that low level is. Because you want to think about, oh, I'm going to need to pose the character. I want to bring it to life. I want to make it look cool. So you got to have a lower subdiv. This leads me to the other big thing that a lot of people will do is they'll start doing things like this, and then they have no low subdivision level. So this is 520,000 polygons now. That's way too dense. It needs subdivision level. So not only did our subdivision level give us the capability to sculpt through something and walk down a lower level, do some big changes, and then go up with higher levels and do some nice fine details. Yes, details. Okay. We also need it for things like posing. Okay. So the other thing, obviously, that's very popular that we all use is our Dynamesh. This is another thing. It's not ready to be posed. This is why we have something like the Z-remesher. So we can reduce that polygon count, right? Get geometry that's flowing in the way we want it to flow, and it also will make sense for when we come into posing. So I want to touch base on that, because going back to Julie now, after that long-winded conversation, so her body has pretty nice equal distributed geometry, right? If we look at the subdivision levels here as we walk up, she gets to a certain polygon count, which is 1.4 million, right? And then there's some sculptural detail on her here, okay? So I want to look at maybe her other subtools, maybe this swimsuit, okay? So looking at this swimsuit, you can see how dense this is, right? But the geometry looks nice, but it's sitting around almost 68,000 polygons. That's a little too dense. Hey, Pierre. Thanks for joining, man. How are things in Montreal? Montreal, man. Montreal Canadiens. Disappointment. Lost to the Rangers this week. They're eliminated. As a Canadian, brings a tear to my eye. But Edmonton and Ottawa are still available. So let's root. I gotta root for my Canadian teams in the playoffs since my Red Wings are out of it. Okay, so looking at this is still pretty dense. So what I'm going to do, we've lucked out, is this particular model actually had subdivision levels that were done by Catmull Clark. So I can hit in the geometry, I can hit this reconstruct subdiv, and you can see I can go backwards. So instead of walking up subdivision levels, I'm creating the lower ones again. So I'm just going down and saying, there you go, that looks pretty good. So now that is 1,100 polygons. If we go look at her, that looks pretty similar, right? And this is my goal. I want to have something, the lower levels of all my meshes to be somewhat similar. Now, the next thing that I see a lot of people when they're starting to pose is they have something like this where there's hair. Okay? Look up here! Look up here! Okay, that means it's an important moment here for you guys. Is you don't want to pose hair, even if in most cases, usually, even if it's sculpted hair, specifically fiber mesh. There's no point in trying to pose that. It's too dense. It's going to be very difficult, possibly, to get the right movement and posing you want in the hair along with the character. So it's best not to even worry about the hair and do it after the pose. Now, if you're like this, where you spent some time maybe sculpting out the hair, gotten the feel because you want that hair on the character so you can get the whole feel, that's great. Definitely do that. But just think about it. You can just turn the hair off, okay? And now I'm not looking at it. So there you have that, okay? So for Transpose Master, no, the subtools do not have to have the same number of subdivision levels. Devil Robot, no. You don't, no, it's not that. It's just, it's best to have subdivision levels. Every single subtool has a low version, right? With that said, if I look at, say, something like the eyes, I don't really need them subdivided up at this point, right? So they're pretty relatively low. And if we look, right, there are no subdivision levels on this. But the polygon count is low. It's only 7,600 polygons. It's not very high. So I don't need to really worry about the eyeballs. They're fine at this stage. Okay, I'm not worried about this at all. Okay, let's just look at now building a rig. So I want to use the ZSpheres to build a rig. Okay, so we've got this Julie model. We've got the hair turned off because I'm going to worry about positioning the hair later on after maybe I'm done my pose, which it's not very difficult to do. It's pretty easy to do. So let's start going into building a rig here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select our Z-sphere. That pops into place right there. Bam! Right, just making sure everyone's awake for the bams. Looking at the menus, down at the bottom, you're going to get menus that only appear when you have a Z-sphere selected. So you have your adaptive skin, your Z-sketch, your rigging, your topology, your projection. Right, so those 5 menus only show up when you have a Z-sphere. So I'm going to open up the rigging because that's what we want to do. Okay, I'm going to select mesh. Okay, and I'm going to select Julie. Now this is going to select whatever subdivision level I'm sitting at right now, right? So I'm going to click on that, and I'm sitting at the low level. So you see she pops into place. She's got transparent ghost thing happening. I actually am not going to want that, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do, if we're talking about steps, okay? The very first thing, Lisa needs braces here, okay? Is I'm going to turn on transparent, and I'm going to turn off ghost, and then I'm going to turn off transparency, okay? I only turn on transparency because it's the only way I can get to the ghost button. That's the only reason why I'm turning on transparent. So once I have that ghost off, and then I'm turning that on. This is going to be huge, okay? This is going to be really important. This makes rigging. This is why when I'm posing, I actually use a rig first to get my major changes, and then I'll use the transpose line to get the lower changes, okay? So, or what I mean, like the little movements like a finger and stuff. I'm going to show you a nice way to use the transpose line to do that as well. Okay, so now we have this. Okay, we're rocking and rolling. Okay, step 1, that transparency thing. Okay, step 2, and I'm going to look dead at the camera here. This is very important. Turn symmetry on. Okay, look how serious I am right now. I'm looking at you. Make sure you turn symmetry on. Okay, so you should see 2 of those red circles. So that's extremely important to the fact that when I'm building anything with ZSpheres, I want to be symmetrical. Even if I'm going to use ZSpheres to build a base mesh, the minute I don't have symmetry on, us as a user, we can shift that thing a little bit to the right or left, or maybe a little bit in the Z-axis. That just sets everything off on you. You're not going to want to do that, okay? So what's winning here? Nanomesh is winning right now. All right, in the voting. So I'm going to say, all right, perfect. Let's use these move, scale, and rotates along the top here, which I'm going to use the shortcuts, okay, which is WER, right, to cycle through these. As you can see, I'm moving through them. So I'm going to switch to scale, and I'm going to scale this down. So this is our root Z-sphere. So what's the root of a human body? If you think skeleton, it's the pelvic bone for me, right? Because that's the one bone, right, where anything is happening around it. So when we're bending our back and our vertebrae is moving, that pelvic bone's pretty much, it's stationary, and it's kind of the pivoting point. Same thing when we move our legs up, right? That pelvic bone is like the pivot bone. That's why, back in the day when I used to work out and stuff for hockey, they're all about the core, the abs, right? And everything leading back down to that pelvic bone so we can be throwing our hips around in placement, okay? So I'm just going to scale it down, and then I'm going to switch to move, okay? And then kind of position it right about where a pelvic bone would be. So you notice it's already sitting somewhat in the middle. That's good enough for me. That's what I want. So let's start building a tree. I'm going to be in move mode. I'm going to tap on this. I can see that this is highlighted because the Z-sphere's got a red circle inside and outside. I'm going to switch back to draw, okay? And I'm just going to click. So you can see what that did is I drew a Z-sphere dead center in the chest right there, okay? So now that I have that, this is now the selected one, okay? And again, I want to make sure at all times, okay, that I'm in symmetry mode, right? This is key again. That's why I'm bringing it up. So when I want to maybe draw out from here, I'm going to switch to move, select it, back to draw. I'm going to say I want to go to the shoulder, to the elbow, probably to the wrist, and to one of the fingers, right? And now we've got to start. This is why that very first step I did with that transparency thing, this is why I'm doing it. Even though it's transparent, ZBrush's Z-spheres are still seeing the vertex points on the model, and we can use it to draw on, and it makes building the rig really fast, okay? So it's clicking. So if we turn to the side, see it's snapping to the front of the surface. That's a feature. It's there also for when we're using it for other things, which we can use Z-spheres to do many other things. So now all I got to do is switch to move. And again, I'm not going to keep saying the shortcuts. You guys probably know these now. W-E-R. In fact, how many people that we have in here have never posed with ZBrush before? Never. Raise your hands and then do a little wave like you just don't care. Okay? So I'm going to switch to move now, and I'm going to be positioning these into place. So what I want to do, obviously, I'm looking at building this rig as, in essence, a skeleton. So I probably would want it to be inside her body, right? That would make sense, okay? And if I want to, now I need to start continuing down the process, okay? Let's just start now. I need to build the hips. So I've got that selected. Go back to draw. I can grab the hips to the knees, to the wall. Okay, so now that we're moving down the line here, right, you see how nothing is selected. This is why I would switch to move. I tap on it. It's now selected. Switch back to draw and beginning to draw my Z-spheres. Now, I know some people might think the size of the Z-sphere, does it matter? Nope. Nope. There is something that's going to matter, which we're going to get into here in a minute, and it's really the Z-sphere placement and the number of Z-spheres. That's way more important than the physical size. So you can see all I'm doing is just moving around my model now and positioning it. The clicking was just getting me to the point where I'm at, where I'm starting to build a rig. Now, I've noticed for a lot of my rigging, when I'm using the ZBrush, I like to using a Y rig. So you can see it's making a Y. So there's a T rig. So this is more like a T because it's making that T. You know, I've found in a lot of cases for a lot of my models that I've wanted to use rigging for, the Y works really well. Okay? But before we start diving into it, let's continue drawing out. We need it at the base of the neck, probably at the top of the neck. We need to get something at the top of the head. Let's draw another one. And if I hold the shift key, it'll snap that sphere, Z sphere, the same size. So you can see they're not sitting aligned inside the middle, right? Okay. Oh man, Kingsley, you got a new nickname. You the King. Nice. I like it. All right. So here we go. Let's move this around now, switching to move. So again, I'm just hitting that W key along the top, positioning these. See, now I'm just grabbing one Z sphere at a time. I'm going to show you guys here more things here in a second that we can do, like moving a whole chain and doing some other parts with it. All right, so getting a little movement in the body. So when I'm building a rig, I kind of want to have some movement in here. So what I mean by that is, see the legs really perfectly straight? I like to put a little bit of a bend in that knee. Just a little bit. Because if you got up really quick from your chair and stood, I highly doubt your knees are going to stay perfectly like two boards, 2x4s, and just perfectly straight. You're going to have a little bit of a bend in there. So I put a little bit of bend in there as well. Okay, so I've got a nice base here. So what I want to start to do is looking at, well, how is this reacting and how is this rig moving my character? So I can switch to bind, and now everything's bound. So what's happening here, if you remember, I went back to saying it's not the size of the Z-sphere, it's the number of Z-sphere and the location. So what I mean by that is we start switching to, say, rotate, which is R. So you have to switch to from the top. I can grab now a chain. So the chain is, there's a Z-sphere and there's a Z-sphere. So if I grab this chain, you can see the arms raise them up. Woo, up here. Here, I've lost 10 pounds. Yes, by working out. And 1 and 2. If it was only this easy to make us slim. Suck it in. Suck the gut in. Okay, so you can see what's going on here. Right? Is that her torso, right? And then her, if you look at her chest, it's stretching, right? All this in here, that's unnatural, right? Because there's a rib cage there to keep all of our organs in check, right? So we have an issue. If we continue down the line and start testing, okay, this doesn't look too bad, but you look in her pelvic area, right? Not so good. The butt's getting a little flat. How does the knee look? It's not bad, but it's not perfect. Okay? So I'm just testing, in essence, the rig. If I unbind it, it snaps back to the original point. We're doing this on purpose because I'm like, okay, I don't have enough Z-spheres. And what's happening here is where this Z-sphere is located, okay, it's going to move portions of the mesh until it reaches another Z-sphere. So there's a soft rigid bind here. So when I click this, in essence, if you go from here down, all this geometry is being controlled by this Z-sphere. This Z-sphere down, all this geometry here has a controlling factor. And then all through here, this Z-sphere can control that. And now the same thing here when I click on this one, right? The next Z-sphere isn't until way up in the shoulder. So all this, right, all the way down to the wrist, and then here in the torso, that is the closest Z-sphere to that torso. So that's why when you raise the arms, that torso is getting raised. Okay? So we need to fix this. We need to do some more things here. So this is why we've unbound it. Let's move it back down and say, all right, let's move this around and think about, let's have a little bit more some Z-spheres here. So I'm going to put maybe a chest into place here. Okay? So I'm going to draw there and say, all right, we need some Z-spheres there, okay, to control her chest. And then obviously for a male, you won't have this problem, but for a female, we're going to need this. I'm going to say we need rib cages, right? So let's throw a Z-sphere there, maybe throw a Z-sphere here, okay? And remember, they're going to be sitting outside of the mesh a little bit because of the way that this system that I'm trying to help you with snaps. Okay. Now I feel like a real chef. Okay, so we're going to move this into place to be more like a rib cage effect. And Keep moving around, people. Look at the model, right? Don't just move in one direction like the band. Okay, make sure you're moving around and looking at all possible positions to make sure it's a skeleton. Think of it as a skeleton. It's got to be inside the body is your best bet. Okay, up here in the face, okay, I probably want some more movement here in the neck, so I probably want to add a couple more Z-spheres there. I'm going to add a Z-sphere here as well so that I can have something for the controlling here in the chin. I don't want that face to crinkle. And knowing what you know now, we literally only had one Z-sphere controlling the entire face. No good. Don't want that, right? And this is why we want to test things. Okay, so now we're starting to get a little bit better. So let's throw the bind on. Let's switch back to rotate and see. So you can see this is much more natural now, right? So you can see that she's not losing that 10 pounds so quick now, right? It's a lot more realistic happening, okay? So we now are just testing this and seeing, okay, what if I now pull this forward, pull it back? Okay, that doesn't look too bad. What about in the neck area? Yeah, that's not bad. The head's staying pretty nice. We got to click on a Z-sphere too, right? So you got to think about that stuff, right? And this is where I could come out of symmetry for just this moment, and I can check side to side movement. Right, I can undo that, put myself back in symmetry mode so I know I'm in symmetry mode. So you can change her chest, right? Looking at the knees, still not that pleased. You can make them do jumping jacks now. And 1, and 2, and 3. And today we're going to breathe in and exhale. Arms above, breathe in. Okay, so there's still some things here that we need to do. Okay, so I'm going to unbind this. Okay, definitely don't like what's happening in the pelvic area. So I'm going to add another Z-sphere here. Symmetry, right? Make sure that when you're going to do this, see how those red 2 circles become 1 green? That's what I'm looking for. So you make sure there's 1 Z-sphere here that can manipulate for this portion. So I'm making sure that that pelvic bone area stays pretty hard. You know, I probably want to have some bum control here, so I'm going to draw another Z-sphere and draw that out. So we got some Z-spheres here to control the buttocks, okay? And what I find very useful for myself is I like to cap the elbow, knees, and around the pelvic bone, right? So here's my elbow. I don't know why I did this. This is probably because I'm teaching my 1.5-year-old elbows, knees, and toes thing, so I'm always doing this with her now. Elbow, eyes, ears, knees and toes, head, shoulders. All right, that's enough. So you know what I mean by cap, I'm in draw mode. I'm going to plop a Z-sphere here, plop a Z-sphere there. So what I mean by that, it's capping this Z-sphere to really only control this portion of the mesh. And then I'm going to cap it here and cap it there. And you can see this Z-sphere here is not really actually sitting at the kneecap. So I probably would want to move it at the kneecap. I'm going to move this at the kneecap. Now, when we're moving things, when we start getting more and more Z-spheres, and I want to start adjusting stuff, okay, there is ways that I can adjust things. And you see I'm just stretching this. Okay, if I grab this chain now, see I can't stretch it. Everyone see this? So I'm grabbing right between these 2 Z-spheres, I'm grabbing this chain, and all that's doing is just moving it. Right? What if it was off a little bit and I wanted to actually stretch it? See, now I'm actually stretching the rig. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm holding the Alt key as an alternate. Okay, and I'm moving this, and now we're moving from this chain down. So you see that's why it's highlighted. So if I grabbed here, it's this Z-sphere, right? That's moving and down. This stuff comes in really handy because if I decide to do things like this, and I start adding hand points, in this case the thumb joint, right? And it's not quite lining up, right? I wanted to be able to go to move. Make sure you're in move, because if you're in draw, the Alt key deletes a Z-sphere. Okay? So I'm holding the Alt key, and then now you see I can kind of position this a little bit and put it right where I want it. that's about all I do with the hands. Notice I'm not really making the rigging for the hands. You definitely could, but I tend to like to use the transpose line to do the hands things, and you'll see that. So don't forget to vote for next week's topic as well. So nanomesh is in the slight lead right now over top of the ZBrush for Photoshop rendering. So again, just to highlight those, ZBrush to Photoshop, I'm going to show you guys how to render passes in essence inside of ZBrush. Take onto Photoshop and use Photoshop as a layering. Nanomesh is nanomesh. I'm just going to go through all the nanomesh with you guys as much as you want. And then we have the breakdown of the materials. That was a request. People want to know more information about the materials. So I just spend all the time in the material palette and going through making a custom materials, of course. And then the last one, I don't remember what that is. Insert mesh brushes. So talking about what you can do with insert mesh brushes along the curve and everything else. Kingsley just posted the link again. All right, so back to the pose. So we are continually growing and growing here, right? So when I bind my mesh, I start doing, and now I can start really seeing what I can do with this. And if I switch to rotate, and now I rotate a ZSphere, look, I can put that movement in the leg. This is why I like rigging. It's so easy to kind of turn our feet now on their axis like that. So in essence, I'm rotating down by the heel, really, right? Because I'm rotating that knee. So this is really nice to be able to do something like this, because when you start posing something, you start moving those legs, you'll need to have that slight little tilt in there, or the arms. So we're starting to make something happen here. I'm getting pretty happy. Now, we're only doing one subtool right now. So when we start posing this, right, how do we get this pose on the resulting mesh? Well, you can't in this workflow, per se. So if I turn on adaptive skin and I hit A to preview, it gives you that mesh now in this posed state. Okay, and what it's doing is showing you a density of 2. So that's showing you this is what the mesh looks like at subdivision level 2. Right? If I go to 3, it's showing me this is what it looks like at subdivision level 3. Okay, so obviously we go to 1. You guys get the idea. Now, there is a trick that if you guys ever wanted to pose a single subtool, okay, which, have I ever really wanted this? No, but darn it, I'm going to show you the tricks. That's what this is all about. It is titled, Did You Know That? That's what we're in right now. Did you know that? As I spit on my Cintiq again. I'm in the spit zone here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and look at my Julie model. Okay, I'm going to say, okay, she's a selected subtool, so that's the one I'm appending to my rig. How many subdivision levels does she have? Okay, she's got 5. All right, and remember, if you guys are following along, make sure to get rid of the layers. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of just some sculpt on here. Let's just simply use the clay buildup. So let's just throw something on her legs here, something in her arm. Here, that's good. Let's get in that cheek, really push it in there. Walk up a couple levels, back to the highest, smooth it out a little bit. So I'm just putting some sculptural elements so we can have a visual aid here and know what I'm about to do. So we're going to have this. You're going to have a sculpt, right, that has details on it. And I'm now making a pose. And I want this detailed part to show up. Right now, that is not what we're getting. So here's how you do it. Number 1, you got to know the number of subdivision levels this mesh has. Okay, so this has got 5. Okay, so when we're going to build this, right, I'm going to delete this run. Okay, and now I'm going to reselect her again. Okay, so you can see it's got the little bit on the lower level, a little bit of sculpture elements. Okay, I'm going to bind this mesh. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to adaptive skin, and I'm going to put this density slider to match the exact same number as the Julie model. Okay, that's very important. Lisa needs braces moment. Look up here. Okay, or my other one now it's become BAM! Right? This density slider's got to be set to 5 because Julie, her highest subdivision level is 5. And now instead of just clicking preview, I'm going to hold shift and click preview. And you can see ZBrush is doing calculations. Bam! And then there you go. What we have now is the resulting mesh that we've been working on. Okay, so what you need to do, here's the last step that a lot of people forget. And again, the chances of you needing this, I don't know. I've never used it, but I'm just showing it to you anyways because you got to touch the model a little bit. You got to have some kind of change. So I just use the move brush, give it a little bit of a move, and then that's it. So now when I come out of preview mode, right, and I start posing, okay, and we start giving a little pose to her. Here, we'll come out of symmetry now and start having some fun here with her. Ooh. Right, shift that leg in. Yes. Hi, everybody. Dr. Nick. Right, and maybe too much there. And again, when you guys are posing, don't try to do this. Oh, the arm up, right? Think about it in kind of like stages. So do some of it in steps, right? So now we've got something like this. Looking good, blah, 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 blah. Now if I hit the preview button, because we did those previous steps, you can see what I get. I get the model, and look, there's a problem down there we need to fix. It's just got to get smooth out. There's one point shooting off. Okay, so the model is now whatever it looks like here at the highest level. That's what's being sent. So you see there's the problem stems from the model in the beginning here. So you'd want to fix that. There you go. So there's that trick. Again, going through these steps. And this is only for if you're rigging a singular subtool. Okay, which we're going to get to here in a minute, doing multiple subtools. So again, you got to find out, number one, what is the highest subdivision level of the model that you're posing? I know what that number is. It's 5. Number 2, okay, we're going to start now building a rig. Okay, so we're going to our rigging. We're selecting that same mesh at the lowest. Okay, once we've built our rig, number 2 is now put on the binding. Right? Then we got to go to adaptive skin. We got to put that density slider to the same number. So I've got density slider at 5 because that's the number of subdivision levels that she's got. We're going to step 3, hold the shift key and click on preview. Right? That'll now give us subdivision level 5 of Julie. And then the last thing you need, step 4, which a lot of people forget, you got to touch a little bit of the model, make a little bit of a vertex change. Not a lot, just subtle. Very subtle. That's making that link that from here on out, ZBrush, I want you, whenever I show preview, show that model. That's what it's doing. And then that's it. Okay, great. That's a single subtool. But what about multiple subtools? All right, let's do this. I'm going to start fresh. Let's clean up everything here. So I'm going to load another project. So there's nothing, no Julie, no nothing. Okay, and this is just so people can go fresh here. I'm going to come out of perspective. I'm going to turn off that camera. We don't need it anymore. We don't need no camera here. Okay, now I want to load Julie. Okay, so she's a tool. I'm going to double click on that. Let's remember she's got layers, right? So I'm going to go to the layers. I'm going to turn them off. And I'm just going to delete them because we're going to do something more with these layers here in a little bit. For me, I'm going to switch to the basic material because I think that skin shade is there. So I'm assuming we still got everyone with me. Yes, because I don't see any chat happening. So either this is really boring or you guys are this enthralled with posing right now. So we've got multiple subtools. If you remember, when I talked, we don't want to worry about the hair. Forget the hair. I'll put that in position. We know the swimsuit is dense. Okay? If we keep it this dense, you guys are going to run into issues where if here, with just using the move brush, right, you're going to get little pinching like this, and it's just, that's not going to work for you. Okay? No point. We don't want that. We want a nice movement tour. I love that every time I bring up movement or something like that, because there's the webcam, I feel the need that I need to move my body. It's like the old school days of me playing the Nintendo NES, where the controller, I gotta jump, Mario, jump, Mario, like moving my controller was gonna make Mario jump anymore. Okay. Bland. So mannequins are ZSpheres, but there's something else attached there, so you can't just plop a mannequin in the mesh. You'd have to turn some stuff off in order to use the mannequins. We'll get to that. So to answer your questions, a yes or no, more no than yes. Because they are technically ZSpheres, but we're replacing the ZSpheres with actual other geometry, and you can't do both. Right? The ZSpheres are being used to create a mannequin. It can't also be a mannequin and used to be a rig at the same time. You'd have to turn off the mannequin portion in order to use it as a rig. But maybe we'll get to that. We'll see if we can get to that. So back to the swimsuit. What do we need to do, everybody? Say it with me. Reconstruct subdivision levels. Okay? So we're going to geometry. We're going to click this reconstruct. And I'm going to go down to here, 1100 polygons. And I'm doing this because this polygon count is matching her polygon. So if I turn on solo mode, see they're pretty relatively the same. You know, there's not a big change there in the geometry. That's important to me. Okay? So turning solo off, we've got a mesh now that has multiple subtools. So we got a body, we got a swimsuit, we got eyes, and we got teeth. We turn the hair off because it's too much to pose that. So I'm going to go to Transpose Master now. I'm going to open this up. And we've got options here. So the T-Pose Mesh button, what that's doing is taking all the subtools, looking at their lowest subdivision level, dropping them to the lowest subdivision level, and then merging everything. You guys are going to see it here in a minute. So when I click that one button, T-Pose to Mesh, okay, it's taking all our subtools at once, dropping to the lowest subdivision level, and merging them as one piece of geometry. Okay? It's not welding, it's just merging them. So that's really important. This is why I started this whole rant today with having subdivision levels, not trying to pose something that's millions upon millions of polygons, not trying to pose some Dynamesh that's really high and dense. It's not going to work very well for you. Okay? No matter what you do for posing, you're still going to probably have to do some touch-up sculpting-wise. Okay? So that's what this main button does. It's just merge everything, put it together. That T-Pose sub-T button is telling ZBrush, hey, this merged piece that is now posed, I want you to send it back to the mesh with all the subdivision levels. You guys will see this. Okay? So what I want to do is, do I want to use a rig? So we started with building a rig with ZSpheres. I'm going to say, yeah, I absolutely want to build a ZSphere rig for her. Okay? So let's see what happens now. T-Pose Mesh. Transformers. It's complete. So you can see what we have here. We've got Julie that has the 5 sub-tools that's sitting here as a separate tool. And I've got a new tool that's actually a Z-sphere with Julie already selected. So you can see there's the Julie, and she's all merged. So the eyes are here, the teeth are here, and the swimsuit is here. So I want to build now a rig. Do I really want to do this again from the beginning? No. So what I did is I pre-built a rig here. So here's a rig I built for Julie. Okay? So the point here I want to highlight is, once you guys have built a rig, you can actually save it out and reuse it over and over and over again. Right? So I pre-built this rig instead of watching me build the rig again. We've already done this once, right? I've got that rig ready to go. And the reason why this is cool is these 2 bottom buttons here in the Transpose Master. See this Store TM rig? This is Store Transpose Master rig. So I can click this. That's like copying this rig, going back to rig number 1, Julie, because that's the one that we have here, and now just hit Paste Rig. Give it a couple seconds here, and what ZBrush is going to do now, because we do have a Z-sphere sitting there, it's going to replace the Z-sphere with that Caroline rig that I made. So depending on the system, this could take maybe 10, 15 seconds. There you go. Boom. Right? So you think about this. If you guys build like a male rig, a female rig, maybe a default kind of quadruped rig, maybe a child rig, you guys could save those 4 tools out and go and load them for any model, and then you can make adjustments. So I've already got this model ready to go with a rig. So going down to rigging, right, I can just hit now bind mesh. And now she is bound, ready to go. Okay, so here, let me brighten up the color a little bit so you guys can see. All right, so I'm going to hit R to rotate. Okay, and I can start moving her arm. Raise her shoulder a little bit, maybe there. Maybe raise this arm up like this. She's totally zombie, right? Maybe give her a little shoulder shrug. I don't know, right? Actually, for a shoulder shrug, move would probably be the best. I don't know. Right, so once we come out of symmetry mode and we're starting to pose, you can really do something unique and different here. Right, and start putting a little movement in the head. So you can either grab the Z-sphere or the chain. Right, so the chain's going to do the Z-sphere above it and all the children after it. Okay, so I'm now just switching and doing some posing. And notice again her neck. See, I'm not trying to do it all from this one. Yes! No, I'm doing this kind of in steps, and I can switch to move and reposition these a little bit. Right, you can see that's changing it. Switch back to rotate in little steps at it, because that's how our vertebrae works. It's all happening in a process. Okay, and then maybe a little bit more here, a little bit more. No, there. A bit more here. Maybe move this leg out. See what I made? Ooh, her leg's broken there. Definitely don't want that. And maybe rotate this Z-sphere. This is the most awkward and crazy pose I think I could come up with. Ah, she's dancing. Do the jig. Okay, so one thing I want to bring up for posing, which becomes extremely important, that I see a lot when people try to pose, is you lose sight the fact that we're digital, and you lose the real world gravity capability. So it's so important, if you guys all did it right now, if we stood up, I'm going to take my headphones off really fast, and then just jumped and went like that, you're going to see there's a certain weight differential happening to one of the legs. Okay? Because one of the legs, there's a different differential happening there, because one of the legs is now holding really all the weight, even though you can't see my feet in there, right? Think about that. One of the heels, for the most part, is always going to be on the ground. And then that's where the weight is shifting. And if you guys took one foot up in the air, you're going to notice your body's naturally going to try and shift the weight to be over top of that heel that's on the ground, right? So when you're posing, how a character is sitting, like you can see she pretty much leaning forward quite a bit. What heel then would be the more important heel? This back heel or this front heel? This front heel, because she's starting to lean forward, so that's where that weight shifting, and then the upper body is going to try and shift over top of that heel. These little things, this subtlety is so important, and that's how you'll get more realistic posing, right? Because if I really make her leg like this, right, now I'm going to say her torso needs to come over a little bit more like this, right? So now it looks like, all right, let's push this leg so it's underneath her, right, a little bit better. And the next thing I do is turn on that floor grid, okay, and I look at it and see, is she actually standing on the ground, right? So I've turned perspective off, I have floor grid, and now I'm just making some adjustments. And see, the floor grid will snap as I move. There, now her foot's actually on the ground, right? And then maybe I want to rotate the foot forward a little bit, more like this. Maybe put a little bit more bend like that. And now we'll rotate this back down to be flat again. Okay, so this kind of stuff becomes important. So it's almost just like on the high wire. Whoa! Okay, so looking at that, I want to get this back to those 5 subtools, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so this is where this second button, T T pose sub T comes into play. So I click this. Boom, there you go, done. Now this is on the model that's got 5 subtools with all my sculpt information on it. Notice the swimsuit's not working perfectly. Right? You're going to have that. There's no way to make this 100% perfect. So all I got to do is select that swimsuit, right? I just got to select that swimsuit. We'll go to the move and start moving this into place. So I'm going to go along the normals with the move brush. That's where this is the best. And just kind of move this swimsuit into place there. Right? That makes sense. And kind of now update this swimsuit to be a little more realistic to her pose, because it's not perfect, but it's getting me most of the point there, right? And then there you go. Oh, we need to fix this a little bit here. There, maybe I'll make this a little bit tighter to her body now. And just keep working on tweaking this. And then there you have that pose. Okay? So I know there was a, hold on, I know there was a question, I think. Kingsley, I missed a question. I think someone was asking a long question. Hold on. My textures using the rig. How do I maintain textures and painting at the highest quality once I convert to adaptive skin? So, Lawrence Kaplan, hi, buddy. It's been a while since I've talked to you. What I'm doing now will maintain all your painting. Okay, because now I'm using the Transpose Master. Okay. So this will help maintain all the painting, because I'm building on the rig, right? And I'm sending it back to that model that has all the details, all the paint details, and everything else. So this is what solved that question. You got to use Transpose Master. There's no way around it. Okay, let's continue looking at this. So I'm going to start fresh again. So let's start a new project. All right, I just want to start completely fresh so we're not getting confused what's happening here in the tool palette. Okay, let's load our Julie. Okay, we are going to need no layers, so we're going to turn them off and delete them. Okay, and then remember the last step we're going to do is the baiting suit. We're going to reconstruct that down to 1100 polygons, and we're going to turn the hair off. Okay, to save myself time, because I'm going to be using her again and again here, I'm just going to save this one out now. Okay, so you guys have seen that process enough. Okay, so we got a rig, so let's also load the rig. Okay, because we're going to want to use that Caroline rig. Right, and this time I'm going to turn on groups. And what that does is maintain the poly grouping. So you can see she got very particular poly groups. Okay, if I want to make sure when I send this over to the version where everything's merged together at the lowest subdivision levels, and I want to reuse this poly grouping, I find this very useful for hard surface stuff, because I might have certain poly groups sectioned off to do some kind of rigging, and now I can use those poly groups for masking capability and pose things. Okay? So, if I want to maintain these poly groups, that's what this button does. So when I click this, boop, right, you can see that poly groups are maintained. And then all I need to do again is Caroline rig, store that, go back to the rig with her. There you go. It says rig number 1 _ Julie, and paste. And then now the original poly groups, okay, that I have are maintained. If I don't do this little groups button, okay, if we go back here, we'll let this finish. All right, there you go. Now the rig's there and I can start going. Okay. If I don't do this, so again, I'm going to start fresh again. And now let's look at what we have if I don't turn this on. Okay. So we made a tool this time. So we're going to Julie this up. I'm going to load my Caroline rig. I know I'm going to need that. Okay. We are going to keep groups off and T-pose mesh. It brings all of our subtools in as one. Look at her. See, she's just one color now. And see, her swimsuit is just one polygroup. So that's all that button, groups button, is doing. It's just maintaining, okay, the polygroups from my original models with all the subtools and bringing them over to the mesh that we're going to pose with. You might want that. You might not want that. Okay? So let's look at this last thing, which is layers. Right? So I'm going to start fresh again. New project. Again, I'm just starting fresh so I have a clean tool palette here and I'm not getting you confused and myself confused also when I start working because I'm dealing with the same model over and over and over again in this demoing. So we're going to load back our Julie. We need the Caroline rig. We definitely need Julie. Okay. I'm going to turn on layer now. So we've got ZSphere rig and layer turned on. Right? Let's T-pose mesh that. Okay. We know we've got now a ZSphere here. I've already built my rig ahead of time. Save myself. Loading here. Store it. Back to my Julie rig. Paste it. And we're pasting that up. So again, it takes about, I think, 10 seconds on my system. 15 seconds maybe. So we'll let that finish up. Come on, Julie! And this is why also I kept deleting. Now, we've got this in place. Let's go down to our rigging. And let's turn on our bind. And let's do a quick little pose. So switching to rotate, start moving a shoulder. I don't know why I always do a shoulder, but I do. Maybe do a little waist turn. And let's do shoulder this way. Let's do an arm up, maybe. Let's rotate the arm a little bit. Rotate that wrist a little bit. See how nice this is? This is why I use a rig. It's so quick and it's very nice. And there's other reasons for it that I'm going to show you here. And it's kind of what we're doing right now. I don't think I'm going to be able to play the video for you, but I'll show you where it is so you guys can play it on your system. Right? And then now maybe pull this leg out a little bit. See, I didn't cap that. It would have been better to cap that. She's doing the mannequin dance, mannequin dance. As you guys all know, I got to make weird noises and sing when I do things. Which I don't know why that is. It's just me. Right? And then now, yes, maybe she's stepping out onto something. This is where you start having some weirdness fun with her, right? And then by putting these three Z-spheres, see, I can really pull that kneecap out a little bit more if I want to. Pull this up. So this is where the caps are going to help me for the pose I'm trying to maybe accomplish here. Oh, it looks so funny. So we're working. Yay! It's totally ugly pose once again. Okay, so we got something though. Let's send it back now. So this T pose to sub T. Okay, I'm going to click on that. All right, we're putting that back on the model. Done. So what really happened there is this. We've got the 5 subtools. Only 4 of them had the eyeballs on. So see the hair's eyeballs off, so it never gets sent. Okay, and now if I open up my layers, you can see there's actually a layer. And I can turn this off and on now. So I can name these poses. So I can do different poses. Weird pose, right? And then that's happening on every single subtool. So here's the swimsuit. So see, it's got its own layers. So see, I can snap the swimsuit back into place. And I rename this one and name this one weird. And then now I go to every single subtool that had the eyeballs on, and they all have layers. Right? Pretty cool. Okay? So they all got these layer capability. Right? And then this is where we can start playing with this. Right? And even use, say, something like the subtool master as well to start doing other things. Okay? Like appending multiple subtools. Okay? Or multiple tools becomes in very handy for that kind of stuff. Okay, so thinking about this, if I now turn off each of these layers, right, what do we get her back to? We get her back to a neutral pose. So if I do this again, right here, I'm just going to turn with no rig this time, and then just transform her, and start using the transpose line instead. Okay, we're just going to do a really quick break her arms and stuff here. Right? Oh man, see, this is why I prefer the rigging approach here. Move her foot. This, her leg is definitely busted now. Fix that a little bit. There you go. She's stepping back good enough. Send it back. Right? And you see every single subtool is getting a second layer now. So now this has got multiple poses. Ballet dancing. Da, 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 da. So this is what that layer button's going to do for you. Okay? So what's cool about this is you guys can even use this with timeline. So if I go to the movie palette, I turn on Show My Timeline. Okay? And I go, all right, let's make a different pose. So here's my camera view. So let's say point there. Let's put a point on the line there. And maybe it moves across and turns gradually like this and a point there. So now I want to have some movement across the screen here. Okay? So what I want to do now, or, let's not do any movement. I'm going to do a camera and a camera. I want to have no movement actually happening. Okay? If you notice, when I click on a layer, though, this right here changes from camera to the untitled layer. So, for example, if I was to rename this leg back, right? And looking at this, you can see leg back. So here it's on. I'm going to say turn it on here, and then turn it off here. Right? And then now when I scrub through this, she moves. When she moves, she dances. Dance. Right? So now this is off here. Right? So now I can switch to this layer, and let's turn this off. I can see that gray dot from the previous layer. See, weird is now selected. Click right there. Let's turn it on all the way. And click here. And now when I scrub through, she goes, starting from here, she goes ballet, ballet, down to yes. Okay, and this is going to get us into things down the road. If we take this topic, timeline, there's other menus called that you guys maybe never have touched. Contact. This is all leading to things like this. What this leads to is a particular video that I'm going to find. Give me a second. It's going to take me a minute because it's really old. Talk amongst yourselves. Topic, what Paul is showing me. Useless, somewhat useful. I love it. And holy cow, I never knew. Go ahead, talk amongst yourselves. Put what you think there in the chat while I look for this video for you guys. Oh, I gotta find it. It's really old. It was on our 10th year anniversary when we did a little video here. Sorry, I don't remember what page it's on. So I need to find it. Oh, okay, we're getting close. We're getting close. I'm just going on ZBrush. So once I have it, I'll put the link in the chat so you guys can just go watch this video as well, because I doubt it's going to play very well over the stream. I don't think it's going to play that well. So let me get back to here. Here is the link that I'm at. I'm not logged in. Hold on. Hold on. I gotta log in. One second, please. So I can put it in there. That's failing. Okay, I'm gonna give it to Kingsley and he can put in there. I don't remember the login I'm using again. So I'll share it with Kingsley and then he can put it in for you guys. So here's where I'm going with this. So this third video down here, okay, is a video where we show a guy like in motion, colors changing, materials changing. Okay, so this is the page that we're got right here. So I would watch that, okay? Unfortunately, I don't have it in chat. So before we end here, I'm going to launch my Slack and I'll give it to Kingsley. Kingsley, don't let me forget, or Kyle, or Michael, or Joseph, or anybody, okay, about getting this video link to them all. Okay, so that's just giving you a little taste of things that you could do. There's a lot more in here, okay? Because the last thing we need to talk about is the transpose line itself, okay? So looking at that, let's look at something more like the demo soldier, because he's got 11 subtools, right? And if you remember, his lower cage isn't that great. So I'm going to just delete that so he's a little bit better, and I'll delete at least that. So we've got a little bit better quality here. So let's now just send this to the T-pose, which again, the T-pose mesh is merging all the subtools, drop them all to the lowest subdivision level, right? So now we have this. There's no rig anymore. So if we switch to move, scale, and rotate here, which rotate's pretty much going to be the #1 thing I use if I'm posing with the transpose line. I don't really use scale at all. Okay? So, well, I don't know what the name of the video is. It's because it's in a thread. So I don't think you're going to be able to find it by thread. If you want to put this, making time for art in Google, ZBrush, here, let's see what this says. Maybe you guys will find it. I don't see this multiple ones. I don't know if it's this one. Let's see. Nope, not that one. Nope. It's not that one either. I'll just get you guys the link. It's not that big of a deal. We'll get you the link. Okay, now, when I am posing with this guy and transpose, when we hold the control key, wherever we drag from, it automatically masks off all the topology, right, on this character, except for everything in front of the transpose line. Okay, so this is nice, great. But when you start posing, right, notice that what else is happening? The glove's not moving, right? And this wristband's not moving. So notice also the pinching, that's all about the mask. So blurring it will start giving you a little bit more quality, right? And then this is where the density comes into play. Maybe this is a little too dense, right? This is why it's so quick to do this, because there's so many spans of geometry through here, right? So what could be better for posing this guy is actually keep it at the lowest and just add spans with the Z modeler where I need them. Okay? So I want to show you guys some stuff here about this transpose line. Now my aha moment for this, okay? So 3D printed found it for you guys. It's in the chat. My aha moment was I looked at this transpose line as a physical real bone. Right? Because this was made not just to move things around and scale, but it was really made to pose stuff. Okay? So looking at that transpose line, it's not really sitting inside the arm. That doesn't make sense. So I need to move this into place and look at all my angles before I do any kind of posing. Right? Now this looks like it's sitting in the arm. So now I can rotate if I want to rotate this mesh. Right? Or maybe I want to rotate from this, again, looking around, seeing what I got, and then I start rotating the hand. Okay, so to move the transpose line around, You're just slightly getting close to that orange circle, right? And then it hovers, and you can see it highlights, right? That's going to allow me to move this around wherever I want. So if I'm down here, it's just moving this one. If I'm up here, it's just moving this one. The minute I go into the middle of the circle, you see another circle pop up. That's just, hey, engaged. Okay, now we need to solve this problem. The reason why this is happening is this masking that we're doing when we hold down the control key and we start and click somewhere, that's based upon topology, right? So if you notice, as we keep going, see, it kind of walks down the topology. We're walking, right? And it just keeps walking and walking and walking and walking down. Well, his body is in essence still its own shell of geometry. Okay? The glove is its own piece of geometry. Even though this is all merged as one subtool, they're not all, it's not welded together in any shape, way, or form. They're still separate pieces, right? I can still select just the glove, just the wristbands, and whatever I want. Okay, so one way that we can play with masking here, right, is when I'm holding the control key, I can mask out a square, right? And I can inverse it. And now you see the glove and the wristband, right, for the sake of time and being fast here. You can see they're all moving, right? So you could also switch to the mask lasso. Might be something you want, because in this way you can do this and put exactly where you want that mask to be. Then I can inverse and then blur it by tapping, right? And then now I switch back to my transpose line and draw this out and position it as a real bone. Take this time. It's more important to take the time to position this right before you even start deposing, right? And then now on as I move this, this is what we're getting. Okay, so the issue you're going to have is good luck like down here. See down here by the foot and the boot? Good luck not getting, if I only want to move this leg, it's going to be very difficult to just only get, see, that one portion of the leg. See, I'm grabbed the other portion because it's literally that's unmasked and that one point's unmasked. So it's pulling. So here's a trick. Lisa needs braces. Lisa needs braces moment. Here we go. So what we can do is when we're going to do, hold on, I need to adjust my ears. I've got big ears, so these headphones start to squish on my ears a lot. Those big ears. Okay, so holding control again, right? I click here and start drawing out. Everything else gets masked. That has nothing to do with the body, right? So everything is masked but the body piece, okay, has the unmask that I'm doing. What I want to do is add the glove, maybe add the wristband to this. So I can tell ZBrush that, hey, I want to add the glove and I want to add the wristband. Pretty cool. Okay, so the reason why I want this is if we take now a different approach, we came here to the leg, right? So there is a certain type of blending happening here, okay? I probably want that same blend on a knee pad, so I can do that. Say right there, and then boom, boom. So the bottom portion of this knee pad, and only this knee pad's unmasked, that's unmasked, and the bottom portion of the leg. So now if I position this, again, remember, like a bone, like a bone. It's like the Madonna song, like a virgin, but like a bone, bam, right? And now I can rotate, and you can see the knee pad is forming a little bit more like the leg now. Okay, see the boot's not coming? All right, let's add the boot, right? So I want to add the boot to my mask. There you go. Now the boot is completely unmasked. Okay, let's blur this a little bit. Maybe a little too much. And then there you go. Now the boot's moving. And now I don't have to worry about that other boot moving at all. Period. So here's what I'm doing. Here's your crazy little trick that you guys can do with this. Okay? Hold control. Click and start drawing out your mask. Okay, that one's done. Okay? Now I want to add this glove to my mask. So what do I always hold? Wow, it's a really close race here between ZBrush to Photoshop rendering and NanoMesh. It's getting really tight. Ooh, it looks like the other two out of the running for the next topic of Did You Know That, which is going to be in 2 weeks. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I love that crazy tangent I just did. I'm giving you guys full-fledged instruction, and I go on a massive tangent. Oh, my camera moved, I think. Oh, that was me. So, again, let me start all over again. Holding control, I'm clicking, dragging. Boom. Bam! I got a mask, right? I'm going to hold control because I want to add the glove to my masking, and control is not the masking key. Now I click on the glove, and I just get a new mask. If I also hold shift and move the transpose line to the open part of the mask, it becomes unmasked. Again, let me do this again. Hold control, start clicking, drawing it out, and now hold shift, and then just put the cursor over the unmasked portion, and the whole glove becomes unmasked. Again, hold control on the wristband, clicking, now hold shift, and then just move my cursor over the open mask, and then there you have it. Go ahead. Bam! So if you look at the head, right, we want to do, say, something like move the head with the goggles. We need to solve this. Hold control, click on the goggles, now hold shift and just move the cursor to the open portion of the head that's unmasked, and there we go. And then now we can move the goggles with the head, and we're in good shape. So now any rotation I do, right, the goggles are moving with the head as one unit. Right? And then now when I'm done, okay, I go back to my transpose master, and I click on that T pose to sub T, and everything goes back. And you see all the subtools move. Boom, 5 seconds that took. Okay, don't forget next week, my man at 3D Printed is saying, I'm not next week. Joseph Dress is next week for the Ask ZBrush portion. I'm the following week. Did you know that? Okay, so everyone understand that trick? Anybody miss it and need me to touch base on that trick again? Is everyone good? Because that ends. I don't have anything else. I think that's all you need to know for posing. So I saw someone saying, is Paul giving you homework? I'm not going to give you homework, but what I would strongly recommend, usually what I do for homework with my students, this is usually what I give them after I show this posing stuff, is I tell them, okay, let's try doing a quadruped, pose that. And I ask them to give 5 different poses of the dog and make them realistic. So you got to go and touch up the mesh afterwards, grab some images, and try and make a realistic pose. Then try doing 5 poses with the demo soldier, because now he's got subtools. So now work with that. So start with something that doesn't have subtools, okay? And then work with something that does have subtools. Now to the mannequins, the reason why you're not going to use that as a rig is because they're mannequins. They have something very specific being done to them. So if I grab these, okay, there's already geometry there, right? So if I look at this and I open up my adaptive skin, see classic skin mode is on? So when I hit A, you get this. This is real geometry. See this? You can't use this as the rig, right? Because we're telling the ZSpheres to do something else. I wouldn't use this as the rig, because then you're trying to put this mannequin in a character, right? So if I try to do, let's grab this guy. Oh, let's load this guy. I know he's got layers, so let's delete them. We don't need those, right? And if I go to the mannequin and I go to rigging, I can go here and say, yeah, he's selected, right? But now these mannequins have also geometry inside them. So there's a double geometry thing, right, happening here. So you see what happens when you hit A? Right? So we need to be able to rescale this down. Okay? So you're going to have all these issues of trying to now adjust this, right? And I can say bind the mesh and rotate. See? It's not looking at the dude anymore because there's actual geometry here, right? So if I go back to the mannequins, Let's grab that guy again. What's happening here is in the adaptive skin, we're using this insert local, insert connector mesh, right? So the local mesh, so when I select a Z-sphere, okay, the local mesh is the Z-sphere itself. So right now, it's using a sphere. If I say star, see, it's using a star now in the middle here. So that Z-sphere right there, see, there's a star. So here, let me go to the shoulders. You'll see it better. Here, I'll click on the shoulders, insert local, star. See, it just replaced that Z-sphere now with a star. So when I hit A, right, I want to have a star there. So now I'm getting both. There is a star here. Oops. See, there's a star still there and a star over there. The reason why I'm getting both is when this mannequin was made, at the very beginning stages, there is a way we can tell the root Z-sphere to, hey, that root Z-sphere, I want it to be a sphere, and every other one drawn out. So like, for example, if I do this, just so you guys have an understanding here of what's happening, and I draw this out, okay? So now I have a chain and a Z-sphere. So here's my root. Turn on classic, and I say local, and I say sphere, and I say connector, this, right? And then now whenever I'm drawing out, right, I want to start getting these pieces. Okay, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm saying this and saying local for this to be that, and then when I'm drawing out, I want the connector, right, to be that. So this is now being, every time I draw out on these Z-spheres, you can see the Z-spheres get swapped out, right, to be a sphere every time I draw, and then the connector mesh is now becoming that other that piece of geometry that I selected. So this is what we did in the very beginning of the mannequin. This is why it won't work with a rig. You'd actually have to get rid of all these pieces, right? So that's why you can't use the mannequins, because there's something being done to it in the beginning of the stages. Does that answer that question about why you can't use mannequins? Everyone understand that? You would have to go through now and get rid of all these pieces. It's just not worth it. For as fast as you can draw out something, it's not worth it, right? To just grab the mannequin. It's so easy to make a Z-sphere rig, especially with that little trick I showed you with the transparency option. Remember that. Turn transparency on, turn your ghost off, and turn transparency off again. Okay? Any other questions we have here that I missed? Boys of the Pixelogic team, did I miss anything from the questions? I think I got all those questions. Looks like the winner is Nano. Nano. Looks like our next topic is going to be nanomesh, unless some last surge of voting comes through. So, Kings, if you want to throw that voting in there again, we're going to have that last bit of vote. Again, if you guys have suggestions for topics you might want, send them to streaming@pixelogic.com. Nano. Do. Mario Brothers. That's right. Nano. So there's a lot of great things you can do in Nano. Thank you whoever posted that straw poll. Put it there. Okay. And Nano seems to be the winner. Chicken dinner. Bam. So Kingsley just put the streaming. All right, so that's posing. So that's going through using posing with rigging and the transpose master, and then taking a look at the transpose line. How you can, oh wait, you know what? I forgot to show one thing. You know what? Boom, I'm so happy I remembered this. This is one of the best things. Remember I talked about my fingers? I told someone to remind me about my fingers. Okay, so when I'm posing with the finger, all right, I don't do this. So we now know, switching to rotate, okay, I can click here and I can get that, right? We know now positioning this as a real bone becomes pretty important. Right? So that looks good, looks inside, and we start rotating this. Right? So you can get this rotation. What I actually like to do is this. See that? Isn't that nice? Right? So I want to mask off and say I want to move this finger. I want to put this circle, this third circle, right where the knuckle is what's important to me. So this one's going to sit at that knuckle. This one's sitting at that knuckle. Going all around. Okay, oops, a little bit more right there. And position this in the middle. Remember, it's a bone, so let's make it actually act like a bone. Whoops, I keep clicking the surface. Doing that. Okay. Moving a little bit more this direction. There you go. So what you do is instead of rotating like this, right? Grabbing this and doing that. Okay. I want to actually turn the finger here. I'm going to hold the Alt key and do that. This is so nice. Bam! Kapow is what someone's put in there. If you hold the Alt key when you rotate, it's rotating around that particular circle, right? So if I go to this one, see, it's trying to rotate around that circle. If I go to this one, it's trying to rotate, see, around the action line. This is what I want. I want that so I can get that rotation. And then now do maybe something, let's remask. Let's redraw out my surface. Position this where I need it to be. Hold down that Alt key and get that. See what I'm saying? This is why I don't actually bother with the rig, because I can get some pretty nice posing. Don't forget, with any pose, you guys are going to have to sit here and touch up your sculpt a little bit like that. And then resculpt some things, right? Just could be minor tweaks, and there you go. I've got a finger moving. Okay, so this helps a ton, no matter what you're doing, right? So even if I was to do something like this, right? I can rotate the wrist now. Right? I can rotate, whoops, the forearm. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but, right? So you can see it's going around and giving you this capability. So I can do this. It's just more freedom there. It comes in really handy, trust me. I use it a lot. So again, that's just using the Alt key, but keep in mind, it's key. First, what you're going to want to do, whoops, is when you draw this out, right, click in this so it's a red circle, then hold the Alt key. Don't hold the Alt key and then do it. See, that's not going to work. Click, see that it's red, I'm hovering, hold the Alt key, and then boom, bingo. Okay? Cool. I do need, you know what would be cool is the old school Batman, the 60s. Pow! Bam! Kapow! If we could have like a graphic that pops up. Pow! That'd be awesome. Bam! All right, so there's the other little trick that I almost forgot to show you. So that comes in really handy, and you can see why I combined posing. I'll use the ZSphere rigging to get big, huge changes, and then I'll use that transpose line to get nice, subtle movement, because then that's what will bring that sculpt to life for me. All right, so there you go. That's it. Any other items that I've missed today? Any questions that I did not answer? Pixel team? Kyle says he wants that. You know what we also want, everybody, for Kyle and Kingsley? Everybody say it with me. Everybody write it down. Say it with me. ABBK. I had to, guys. I had to. Does pineapple belong on pizza? Yes, Ashley. Yes, it does. You don't like pineapple on pizza? You don't like Hawaiian pizza? I think it depends on where you go. Because ham and the pineapple together, that's just, perfect, perfecto. I like Hawaiian pizza. I think it's pretty good. So it looks like Nanomesh did win out, so that's going to be our next topic. Okay? So Kingsley's upset about the ABBK. I hope for those veterans, Pierre was in here. Ashley, I hope you learned something from here too. And those, thanks again for streaming. For those who are up early in the morning with my man Michael Poplovich, good to go. But the next stream is tomorrow, and it's with Ashley, right? So make sure you guys don't miss her stream tomorrow. Right? And then next Tuesday is Mr. Joseph Drust. Right? And then I'm the following Tuesday. I'm going to take a drink of water real quick. Oh, Vichar, you're in here too. Hi, my man. I love it. Hi. What's the YouTube thing? Is this Nat King Cole? Uh, it's escalating, boys, unfortunately. Blame it on the youth. Nice. So good. I love it. Now there's even a theme song. Joseph for president. What the heck, man? What am I? Chop liver? I'm just kidding. All right. Have a good one, guys. Enjoy. Pierre, thanks for being here. Ashley, thanks for being here. Those that constantly tune in for these, we really appreciate it. I'm going to see you at the next Did You Know That? In Joseph, we do trust. That's one of my sayings I gave him. Yeah, and his brother uses it too. So thanks again. We look forward to seeing you at Ashley's stream tomorrow, where our boys Kingsley, Michael, and Kyle are always on it and in them. Thanks. Make sure you thank those three guys too for always being on top of this and getting in here. It's really cool to see this grow and become what it's become today and continually to expand. All right, guys. Have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Bye-bye. Bye.